dimensionally transcendental, bigger on the inside.
Hello and welcome to my chapter review of It, the novel. Today we're going to be taking a look at chapter 18, The Bullseye. And I gotta say, I like this chapter a lot. We start out in the beginning with Ben in the present tense, and he's realizing that they're all going around the table telling stories, and he's the very last one, and he knows exactly the story he needs to recount and tell. They do mention Stan at the beginning of this chapter a little bit, and they say Stan's demise can't really be blamed on anyone in particular, because Bill, as much as anyone else, wanted to be able to defeat the monster. So that was an interesting thing to start with. So, we get this story of them trying to devise a way to defeat the monster, and we already got a little bit of this before because they decided to get some silver dollars together and create some slugs with which to shoot the monster. So we go into this story with them trying to get all the equipment together, researching in the library how to get all these things together and how to use those to make these little makeshift weapons. They get the tools they need together and they go to Bill's house. Right. I was trying to remember whose house they went to. They went to Bill Denbrough's house, and they have this thing where they're pretending to play Monopoly, and they're going into the garage, and Ben is putting together his expertise and melting down this metal and safely pouring it into this little slug shell thing, and he successfully makes 2 of these slugs. It was very impressive. We got kind of a funny scene here where Ben is trying to tell Bev indirectly that she doesn't have to worry, but he's afraid that he'll blush or his voice will shake if he starts to say that kind of thing to Bev, so he turns to Stan and he says, "Everything's gonna be okay," and Stan's like, "What?" He's like, "Don't worry," and Stan's like, "I wasn't." He's like, "I'm just telling you this just in case you were." That was pretty funny. And then later he has this heroism fantasy where he tells off Bev's father because she's getting angry with her. He's getting angry with her in this fantasy, and Ben's sitting there and stepping up and saying, "No, you don't harm her." And she says, "Ben, I love you," and gives him a hug and a kiss and all this stuff, and it's pretty funny because he discovers that he's standing in the garage alone and nobody else is in there, and I thought that was pretty funny. Okay, so they finish making these slugs, and they decide to go down to Neibolt Street and take on the monster. So the scene where they get to the house, I like the way that's written. It reminds me of a scene from another book I've read where all the characters react to the same thing in all different ways. In this chapter, when they all get to the house on Neibolt Street, they realize that the monster's there, but they all feel it in different ways. It reminds them of different bad experiences that they've had. I liked that. The house on Neibolt Street has always given me kind of a fright reading about it, and this chapter was no exception. I was actually really scared when I read this chapter, and that's not something that's normal for me when I'm reading books, that I actually get scared while I'm reading it. And I think the reason I got scared this time especially was because it was late at night, and I was home alone, and that doesn't help when you're reading Stephen King. That also happened to me while I was reading another one of his books before. But they all go down into this little crawl space that they went to before, and all of them are there this time. We had kind of some situation comedy with Ben getting stuck in the window, where it was like I felt bad for him, but it was written in such a way where the other kids' quips were making me laugh, and it felt like the Seinfeld music should have been playing. So that was some nice comic relief. It kind of took me out of it, actually. It kind of went the other way where I no longer was afraid, but once they got into the cellar in Neibolt Street, I was thinking, "Oh shit, now I'm afraid again." So that was pretty well done, I thought. They go up, and all these weird things keep happening in the house. They find some animals that scare them a little bit, and I realized this thing, which was, this is one of those cases where something is being written about that's not itself very scary, but the anticipation and the weird imagery and the atmosphere is what's making it frightening. When they went into this house and the room started to warp, sort of like they did in the clubhouse during the Smoke Hole chapter, when they went in there and rooms started being different sizes and things didn't turn out just right, or things didn't seem just the way they should in this room, in this house. They would go into places and rooms would appear to shrink or grow, or the ceiling would be higher, and it was getting all warped and stuff like that. And people seemed further away, and things kept seeming to pass behind them. That was really freaking me out. And there was even this one scene where they were down in the cellar where Bill starts to go up the stairs, and he pulls something out from under the stairs, and it's just a single clown's glove. And that freaked me out too. So all that very well done. They go into one room, and they open it up, and this black stuff comes out of this mattress and tries to chase them, and they close the door quickly, and it's not there anymore. That's interesting, because I didn't know you could get away from it by just slamming the doors, but apparently you can. They go into this other room, and there's this machine thing that is supposed to scare away some animals on the floor. But before we found that, there was this buzzing sound coming from the room, and it was freaking them out, and that's when I got the most tense. After they went to those two rooms, we had a couple parts that I really, really liked. The first thing was Mike, or Bill. I know I said I really like this, but one of the two of them was reassuring Stan, because Stan was kind of freaking out, just like he was freaking out when the photo album thing happened. And he was saying, I have nothing. And I think it was Bill who said, you have your birds, you have these things that you like, and it's not meaningless. And you have something to hang on to. Even if it's something small, you have something to hang on to. And all throughout this encounter in this house, I was laughing and I was terrified at the same time. And I really liked that, because I think the point of this book, not necessarily the point as in it's trying to teach a moral or something, but I think a large part of this book is it's okay to be scared sometimes, because there are people who are going to be with you. Sometimes things happen and you're frightened and you have to go into them and you have to deal with them anyway. But that's okay, because you have people to support you, and you have your courage, and you have what you're fighting for. And this was just a perfect experience of that, actually. There was this part in the book, or there was this part in this chapter where they look back at one of the rooms, and the darkness is starting to swirl into faces and things. And I had one of my doors just barely open when I was reading this, and I looked over at that door, and it was all dark. And I was almost reliving this at the same time. So they go to this door, and they throw it open, and I kind of stopped being scared at this part, but I still liked it. That was kind of a disappointing thing there, was once the monster showed up, it wasn't as frightening. But Beverly gets these slugs, and she's shooting them at the monster, and she misses one the first time. Interestingly, last chapter, she tried to shoot one of the monsters with the slingshot, and it missed a little bit, but it kind of curved on its own back there. But it didn't happen this time. She completely misses this monster. This monster comes out of this hole in the floor where the toilet used to be, because it got blasted to the side, and of course the kids had to make a joke about that. But it turned into the teen wolf. And it came out of the floor, and Beverly missed it the first time, but the second time she got it. And they scared it away. And they didn't kill it. But Mike said this thing in this chapter, he said, I'm scared of it, but I think it's scared of us too. And that was just a great moment between the characters. But anyway, Beverly shoots this monster. It goes down the drain. Literally, it goes down the drain. And Ben has been hurt pretty badly. He got scratched down the stomach. And they're shaken up. But ultimately, they face their fears. But they do realize that next time the monster is probably going to take the form of something that's not going to be vulnerable to the silver. Their whole justification, by the way, for doing this was that the silver is probably going to kill the monster, because it's always a silver bullet. They were going to make some silver bullets, but they discovered that wouldn't work. They didn't have the resources to do that. They didn't think. So, like I said, I liked this. The horror, me actually being afraid, dropped off once they were facing the monster. Then it was just a tense action scene. But I like this. I have to complain about something that I complained about last time too, which is the overfocus on constantly telling the audience what Beverly looked like at the moment. It just slows down the pace, and it doesn't seem necessary. one thing I liked at the end of this chapter was that the last little bit was nothing else happened for the next few weeks. That was at the very end. I liked that. I thought that was funny. It was its own section. But anyway, I like this. I like chapters that have the more horror elements in them. And obviously the character development in this chapter, the character bonding, I should say, very, very strong. Quite good. So that's really all I have to say about that. I'm sorry I'm talking so quietly, but it is late at night, and I'm trying not to wake my neighbors up. I'm trying to be considerate. So, other than that, if you like this content, be sure to like this content because I'll be making more of it. And if you want to get this content on a semi-regular basis, then go ahead and hit subscribe because I will be uploading this on a semi-regular basis. But other than that, I will see y'all next time. Have a great evening, day, morning, whatever it is, and talk to you later. Bye-bye.